Welcome, Nesta, to the JCS show. We did an episode, we were just talking about a year, 9 months ago in Eugene, Oregon. And now we are in Tampa, Florida. Megan and I were just on a trip in Clearwater. But we're flying out of Tampa, and you're now got your bona fide professor here at the University of Tampa. So
that's what they say, allegedly.
But yeah, so I'm excited that we get to cross paths again. I think last time we met, we were in Oregon. The time before that was Arizona. The time before that was Nevada. So every time we meet, it's a different time, different place, but it's cool.
Yeah,
it's been fun every time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the core question of this podcast is, what are your values in the context of your life story? And so on the last episode, and I haven't watched it since we recorded it way back, but we talked about, you're from Kenya. We talked about language. Remind me, how many languages do you speak? I know English is your fifth language or something.
It's my fourth, yeah.
Your fourth language.
I do speak in total, maybe I would say 5 fluent, and then in total around 12. But the others, it won't be fluent, but at least I can hear what people are saying. I also speak just a little bit. I can get myself around or my way out or something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I remember that was one of my favorite parts of that last conversation we had was language. And so I'll include a link to that video. But yeah, here we are in Tampa. We'll continue that conversation. I'm not going to go through your whole life story because we already recorded the main ones before. But yeah, first of all, tell me a little bit about your radio station. We were just talking about it here. You were just playing it for us at the end. Maybe you can play it a little bit before we cut the video. But what is your radio station? How does it all work?
Well, NNN Radio is the #1 radio station that rules the nation with positive qualification, sweet vibes and sensation till the next generation, right? It's your go-to place, a one-stop shop for African diaspora music, Mexican diaspora music, and you could also catch some American music and some British music too. And the reason I do this is because I would like to somehow connect various cultures together, while for the most part I do collaborate with a lot of podcasters from African diaspora, African Americans, and Afro-Caribbean, and play some reggae music, and some Africans from the continent. We also play and showcase stuff from other cultures. And my objective is basically to bring the world together through this tiny radio station called NNN Radio. And so you can find it on your app store. You can get in there, download quick, all right, and listen to music, the best of podcast shows, news, anything, all right? 365 days, 7 days a week. 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
So no matter what time it is, NNN Radio, Nesta News Network is playing. And I'll include a link everywhere this video is posted, but one thing you started getting into there is that you want to bring cultures together. Yeah. So diving into that a little bit, like why? Yeah. What about that is motivation to you?
Well, the whole world is divided, right? You tune into the news, you get on your TikToks and digital media, and all you see is all fussing and fighting, right? Battles and strifes, and people are pointing fingers to each other and stuff. And so you want to ask, I'm always asking the question, all right, you can point fingers at me, I can point fingers at you, but the question is, what next, all right? How can we come together as a people and somehow find solutions, all right? How can we unite together, right? And now I realize we all come from various political ideologies. We are different emotionally, physically, everything, right? But at the same time, there's one thing that connects us, which is we're all humans, right? We all bleed, we all feel pain, we all get sick. I mean, let me speak for myself. I get sick sometimes, right? But I do believe, and we'll all somehow, we're just like flowers. A time will come when, we'll somehow fade out of the face of the planet, all right? And so I believe there are a lot of things which connects us together. And one of the things is also music, right? Which somehow, I find like when I play music in the station, a lot of people are interested from various backgrounds. All right. Now you realize a lot of my listeners are actually from Asia, Europe, and then Africa, and then Latin America, and then other parts of the world. And somehow I think what brings them together to somehow download my app or get an interest as far as catching or listening to my programs is concerned is because of what I offer. And part of it is music and some great programming, which highlights this aspect of uniting or somehow bringing the world together and forging that bond. All right, because there are a lot of things that divide us, just like I've mentioned, but is there that one thing that can be able to somehow speak a universal language, all right, irrespective of people's backgrounds, religion, culture, political ideology? And I feel NNN Radio is the place. And I see you also trying to somehow emulate me by bringing the JCS show to somehow bring the world together, right?
Yeah. Honestly, the same kind of thing. And before we started this podcast, you asked me the core question, and I was telling you it's what are your values in the context of your life story, and then you asked me like what are you trying to learn from that? What are you trying to? And I'm honestly still thinking that was a good question. I was still trying to think about it. What gap am I trying to fill? But I think that when I used to travel abroad, I was always struck by like the differences. You know, like the McDonald's tastes different, you know, the Coke has sugar instead of, and then more so people speak different languages. People operate a little differently. There's different dynamics in crowds, and, you know, it's just, you move a little different. And so at first that's kind of what stuck out to me. And then the more I traveled, the more I started to notice the similarities, you know, and it's really, I think it's more similarities than differences. But what I feel is that, people are connected, and we have a lot of the same values, even though we have different ideologies, different religions, different cultures. We all are connected. There's a lot of overlap. So it's interesting to hear what you're saying, and so I guess coming from you, and like I said, we've met in Reno. You lived in Oregon. Now you're in Florida. I know you spent a little time in DC as well. So you've done East, West, North, South. You've seen it on the United States, and then
you've been to 30 states, man. 30 states, and 31 maybe, and still counting, because I now want to go to Hawaii. That's the state that I haven't been to, which I really want to go. And maybe McDonald's tastes differently there, right? And so, I still want to travel. But yes, I've seen, at least I've been blessed to say, and privileged, honestly, right, to somehow mingle with some great people, just like you mentioned. I think we met in Nevada, and then we have somehow maintained connection since then, which is a beautiful thing, because you realize when you tap onto a positive energy, there's always growth in people, right? Now, if you meet me today, I won't promise that I'm going to be the same Nesta that you met 5 minutes ago, or maybe let's say 5 years ago. It's going to be a different. So there's an evolution, right? And so if we tap onto this positive spirit, moving on to the future, I'll always know that there's somebody somewhere living in Bellingham, all right, that I can always count on, right? And to you too, you're always going to know there's somebody somewhere in Florida that you can always count on. And so it's a value that I think, coming back to your question, which I think it's a value that I'm one of the values that I think really is important to me is the value of loyalty, right? Since I was young, my grandma who raised me taught me to be loyal, all right, to friends especially. Now, you don't want to get into it blindly, because some people can shake your hand with the right hand, but they're also holding a knife, right? And so the people can also want to stab you as soon as you look away and stuff. And so now loyalty, while I'm loyal, doesn't mean that I'm blind at the same time, all right? But you can always feel if someone is a good guy. If someone has great intention, you can always feel deep down, all right? And so loyalty, friendship is a value that I really, and you'll see this, I'm pretty sure, just like you've mentioned, you've traveled abroad. It's hard to navigate, all right, if you're in a new country, new system, but if there are people who are loyal and you find some good friends, at the same time, you just feel like people who you are with on the same energy wavelength, right? And then it's much easier to trust them and somehow forge those connections and bonds, which then will help you in terms of the future. And so as far as values goes, I tend to think of myself as somehow a valueless person, right? I go with the spirit, I go with the flow somehow. But I do think that there are aspects such as tenacity, hard work, determination, which were instilled in me since I was a young kid, right? And now I grew up with a grandma, and my grandma was a teacher too. I don't know if you have parents who are teachers at all.
Yeah, my dad's a teacher.
Yeah, and they tend to be a bit strict, you know. It's like, hey, you gotta read, all right? There's always a book somewhere. There's always something going on. And so I grew up around those values in Africa, right? Specifically where I come from. It's always a culture where if you're a kid, everybody can be able to punish you, right? Here in America, it's much more individualistic, right? If you saw a kid doing something wrong somewhere, you just be like, oh, their parent will take care of something, right? But in Africa, different culture. My villagers or neighbors can punish me for doing wrong. Now you grow up with this fear, all right? Fear of elders, being respectful to others, all right? And I think those are some of the things that have really helped me as far as being a man of value is concerned. But now I did ask you the same question. What are you trying to achieve, all right? Why do you think you're asking the same question? And because sometimes when you're on a fact-finding mission, right, like as a researcher myself, right, there's always a reason, or objective or goal behind a certain question. If I pose, let's say I want to do research. And since I've known you for a long time, right, I think you're a good guy, great guy. And I ask that because I do know that the JCS show, right, is one show that is going to explode someday. It's going to be really huge, right? It's going to be this big time huge stuff.
People
right?
just be flipping back and forth
Yeah.
between the JCS show
Like,
and the
have you
Nesta News
seen it?
Network. They'll
I
just,
like the name too, right? It's kind of interesting, right? The JCS show, right? It reminds me of those CNN or whatever, big time. And so I feel the values that you espouse personally, all right, connect with mine somehow. And that's why I think we can be able to sit and talk, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, if, you had your values which are really not connected with mine, then we'd be fighting on this podcast
Yeah.
right now. I mean, I can't fight you because you're now a personal trainer or something. Yeah. But values, I think it's an important question that you pose. And I do think that as far as value is concerned, we all need certain kinds of values, all right? And now, sometimes some people might have values deep down, but what they show you is something different at the same time, right? So there's that value which you say, I'm loyal or I'm a friend, but some people might do something else, which you're like, is this the guy that was saying this yesterday? But I think, in terms of just getting to know you, also personally, in terms of the values that I believe in have gotten me to where I am today, having come to a different country and trying to navigate all these aspects. Now, I do talk too much, but hey, go ahead.
That's what podcasts are for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for me, what you're saying is like we've got similar values, we can connect. But I honestly think that most people have similar values. It's hard to like most people value loyalty. Most people value friendship. Most people have a fear of the person with their knife behind the back is gonna take advantage of your trust. Those are all universal values. Maybe not completely universal, but largely accepted values. So I don't know. Like we become friends. I don't know. And I think we're able to communicate in a compatible way to get to those shared values. Whereas people who struggle to get together, it's not necessarily they have different values as much as they don't. Their communication styles or
maybe they do have different values because people wouldn't be stabbing people in the back if they all favored loyalty and friendship. So in that sense, that is where different values come along, or else then there would be no knife stabbing and other conflicts. It'd be more of a smooth wave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are different values. So I guess it's it's hard. It's hard to get to that level where you can coexist and like truly trust someone. And so it's, I guess the question is, how do you bring people together? And so I'm doing the podcast, you're doing the music.
Yeah.
And then I guess with your music, how do you try to make it universally accepted, or not just universally relatable, universally in tune? What do you do? Since you said you people from Asia, people from South America, Africa.
Yeah. Now, as a musician, or as an entertainer, or as someone who's in the entertainment industry, sometimes it's just some vibration in the music, right? You don't know what people connect to or not. But I think it boils back deep down to there are things that people want, but they don't know how to find it. All right, I think I bring it to them through their app, all right, or through the station, and you'll find that a lot of people, like, I am African, right, but I also want to learn about other cultures too. I want to learn about Indian culture. I want to learn about Arab culture. I learn about Chinese culture, right, Russian culture, Ukrainian culture. I want to learn about British culture, right?
What is it that drives you? Like, why? What would you gain from learning about these different cultures? What's behind that for you?
You never know. I might just get a wife from anywhere, you know. And but conversations too, because we now live in a global world too, right? And you don't want to meet people or you don't want to go out on dates, for instance, and lack anything to say.
Yeah,
you have to connect with people somehow. And personally, as a professor, being that I teach communication and media, for instance, I teach students from various parts of the world. All right, so I've got students who come in from Haiti, Dominican Republic, Americans, Mexico, some come from Turkey. And so I always want to connect with these students, all right, at a much deeper perspective. And I feel the more I'm open to learning other people, where other people are coming from as far as background is concerned, I realize they won't be the same as me, or they won't believe in the same things that I believe in. But you also want to get deep down and see, where are they coming from? Why did these students say this and that, all right? Or if I meet somebody from a culture that I don't understand, I always like to go back and dig deeper. I think it's this fascination that also puts me on the other side, like, all right, I could be able to also provide these same students with something they don't know. All right, and so that's why I bring African culture to them. And it's the same thinking that I bring African culture and other cultures which may not really get attention as far as the mainstream media is concerned. All right, and so it's up to me to use the power and knowledge that I have in this limited basis, basically, to bring to them something for free that they may not really have. All right, so in this case, African diaspora music and every type of music that I do play in this session, for sure. Yeah, like, I don't know if I ask you right now, what's your top 5 African music? Or who are your top 5 African musicians?
I can't even name 5, but the only one I like is Omaha, or the I don't even know the name. Omaha Lay, maybe.
I've never. Maybe if you sing, do you know of any African musicians?
I don't know the names. No. No.
Yeah. But you can sing or you can dance to the beats, right?
Oh, yeah,
exactly. Right. So you don't really have to know much, but the vibration in the music just flows and kicks your spirit somehow.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I was teaching students this week. I was like, using music to show. Are all cultures similar, right?
Yeah.
And so you realize that the more you listen to music, leave alone the pop charts or the top 10 charts or the top 100 charts and all that stuff, that is not real music. If you go deep down, you realize people use different sets of instruments which somehow sound similar, all right? And so through music, you can be able to tell much as far as people and how really connected this world is. Whether you go to the United States of America, they want to come out together as one and celebrate the music and any other part of the world. So I think we are much more similar, and that boils back to your question as far as value is concerned. My value, although I tend to think of myself as valueless most of the time, but I do think bringing the world together is a value that means much more to me than anything else, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of music as a language. And if you think about it that way, it's probably the most universally accepted language. It's just, I don't know, I think if you go back as far as people have been able to record, there's been music, and if you go back probably as far as we've been able to speak, there's been music. At the very least, just drums and rhythm,
Yeah.
And it is cool because everyone can, like, Megan, you're a dancer, everyone can, like, pop in on the same beat. Everyone can, like, get into the same rhythm with each other. And I think that's a lot of what communication is. It's just like syncing up your rhythm. And then I'm curious. So if you're brought together and you're talking about the reason you like to travel, the reason you like to learn about different cultures is
to get married to those cultures.
That's always a bonus. But So if you learn about an individual, you learn about their life experiences, then you can relate to them. And the more you learn, the more they learn about you, the less likely it is that they're hiding with that knife behind their back, ready to stab you. Have you experienced that with different cultures as well? Do you think the more that you understand different cultures, the more empathy you have for cultural differences, the more you can relate with things that don't necessarily make sense the first time you see it?
Yeah, that's for sure. That's the cliche answer, right? But it can get more complicated than that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to learn more for sure. We're going to reach at a level of understanding. But before you get there, sometimes you might step on people's toes, right? And so some people can be judgmental at times, right? The people won't give you a second chance, especially depending on whichever culture. But there are people who are also understanding at the same time. And so in my own experiences, not everybody is going to be your friend. You will not everybody will ever agree with you at all. And there's always going to be one or two people who really, you won't feel each other's vibes, right? Which is normal, which is perfectly fine, right? That's why a lot of things, the friends that you may have today might not be the same friends you're going to have 10 years from now, right? People change, things change, times change, places do change too. And so I give thanks, honestly, I look back and say, I give thanks to whoever has stuck by me over the years, all right? And at the same time, there are also people who I may have made connections with. Maybe we might have lost communication or touch at some point. And so it doesn't mean that they hate me or anything, right? It just means that maybe they have evolved and move on to other things, right? But at the same time, I always like to look at the positives, right? I think in my travels, in my interactions, I've really interacted with a lot of people that I've really learned from, and of which I take that, and maybe in my memoirs later on when I retire, right, I want to be able to somehow jolt down and capture all these experiences for sure. But how about you, though? In your travel, since I don't know, Bellingham, possibly, I do know that's where you live right now.
Yeah.
Do a lot of people, do they somehow... do a lot of people stab you back, or are you making good friends, or how is it? How is the experience like over there?
Yeah, Bellingham's cool. I do feel like after having been in a lot of different places, and I've lived in, I don't even know, maybe 6 different states in the United States. I've been to most of the states, just on road trips and stuff. From the East Coast, lived on the West Coast. So I feel like I've kind of developed a perspective where I just go by my gut, There's some people you just don't. It doesn't feel. I can't feel comfortable around. So that's kind of how I go about it. But I honestly think every place is the same. Like in Nevada, it was more of a conservative area. In Reno, where we were both living, Bellingham is a very progressive area. Different sides of the political spectrum. A lot of I keep coming back to, like, I really think most places are the same. Like, you get your outliers from the local group, and no matter where it is, whether it's a progressive person in a conservative area or a conservative person in a liberal area. But I think like you can build trust with people of different viewpoints of different sides of the spectrums.
Yeah, is that the same for you too?
Yeah, I'm like just kind of thinking about why it seems like in one area there's like a majority of one people with like even like politics like one side of politics are all together. I mean, it's probably because they like value the same things, but it's interesting how it gets more.
Yeah, I've thought about that. There's like different buckets, like the conservative. There's the red and the blue in the United States, and so it's in the conservative though. It's like we've got financial things. Like the conservatives like taxes a certain way. They have certain views on abortion, and all these things are all in the same bucket, even though they're not necessarily like abortion and taxes are two completely different things. But like they're all grouped into the same bucket, and so it's
It's an interesting question actually, and you find just like I did mention, people with the same energy they tend to somehow gravitate towards the same direction, right? And so you'll find, and in this country, it's even much more divisive because you find people don't want to talk to each other at all, right? It's like the Democrats or the liberals, they want to just have friends who are liberals, right? Yeah. And so they delete each other on Facebook. Oh, that one's a conservative. Out of my Facebook friends list. And the other side too, right? Yeah. And so with the digital technologies also, it's somehow becoming even much more somehow divided, right? And with the political rhetoric and all these factors, cancel culture too, right? Because now people don't want to post because they know there's always an eye that is somehow monitoring. So there's this aspect of self-policing somehow, which really makes people get scared and somehow gravitate and pull towards each other. And so it goes back to the question of, while we are trying to somehow bring people together and have conversations, the environment or the political situation or any other situation somehow is trying to fight against that, right? And who does it serve? Whose interest does it serve when everybody's divided? Are some of the deeper questions we should ask.
I think that it's counterproductive. That's just how it goes, where people like one side, how they like do that. I think that's why this is never going to happen ever. But if we just canceled, I mean, it's never going to happen. But canceled political parties, and then just all came together to like talk about it, I think that would be beneficial, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
It's, I think too, like there's not a ton of like, crossover, there's like, in this political election, we're in 2024 for anyone who's watching this 10 years from now. But, in this political election, there's not a lot of debates with the Democrats and the Republicans.
Yeah,
it's all.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah, it's speeches and it's people saying their ideas, but not really like
talking.
Yeah, there's no resistance. And I think that's what we're finding more and more with social media too. It's you kind of get knocked into your silo, whatever side that is, whatever your beliefs are.
Yeah,
the algorithms figure out what your beliefs are, and they show you more and more things that reinforce those beliefs, and they show you less and less of the things that you disagree with that are going to make you upset because. If it makes you angry and you click off of the app, they've got that in the algorithm. They're not going to make that happen. So I think, just as individuals, we're getting more stuck in our own buckets, which I keep calling them. And then as groups, we're getting kind of like herded together into those buckets.
That's so,
And there's not enough like exposure to opposite, or not even opposite, just different opinions.
Yeah. That's what politicians also want, because if it was... for the Democrats, they would want the whole country to become liberal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The other side also would want, that's what they want, right? They want to maintain power, right? But I am of the opinion of diversity, right, in terms of perspectives and how people think. And so I tend to find especially in a culture where I come from, we don't really have like, it's either you are in this party or this party, you know. We've got hundreds of political parties, but then it also gets much more divisive because of tribalism. In the sense of we've got different tribes, and all they look at, they don't look at their liberal or conservative interests, all right? They look at the interests of their tribe, all right, their people. And so it gets much more divisive. In other countries such as Somali, it's clans, right? So clans gang up against each other to somehow create a formidable force, all right, and consolidate power, all right? So I do not know of that one country that has gotten it right as far as unity is concerned.
Yeah.
But the various diverse perspectives somehow shape the way we do, right? Because if everybody would have been thinking the same, then the whole world would be boring, honestly, right?
Yeah.
I like to travel to various parts because in Nevada, you mentioned it was much more conservative. But, you know, in Nevada, I also learned a lot of country music and horse riding and doing all that cowboy stuff, right? At the same time, Eugene, Oregon, where it's leftist, all right? They also taught me some anarchism somehow. They taught me some types of lifestyle that when it comes to, let's say, things like polyamory and stuff like that, I had the first time when I went to Eugene, right? And so I was like, wow, right? All these diversity in terms of perspectives and stuff. So it was a bit interesting in that regard, just learning American culture. And America can teach you so much. Just meeting different people, because the beauty about America is that people are just so different. Some people are Danish Americans, Turkish Americans, Italian Americans, British, Irish Americans, German Americans, Dominican, and so there's just different people. When you bring them together, it somehow talks about that unity that we talk about, right? Just diverse perspectives and opinions, which is critical, I feel.
How does that differ? Like what you're talking about is like the history of immigration in America, and how there's not too many people that have been here since the 1700s when America was started. So most people have immigrated from different places over the years, and so it's kind of become something of a melting pot. But how does that compare to what you were talking about earlier, the tribes and the clans in different parts of Africa?
It's similar too. It's similar because my tribe, the Luo, it say that they came from Egypt, and then they came down to Sudan, settled in Sudan for a while, and then moved down towards Lake Victoria, where we are settled now. Who knows, maybe 400 years from now, those who will be there maybe might move on to a different place, right? And so you find like in Kenya, there are these 44 different tribes who speak totally different languages, and some came from the east, some from the south. Some, it is said, they might have moved in from Central Africa, right? And then they met. But what now happens is that with colonialism now, they somehow decided, okay, these 44 tribes are going to create a country called Kenya. All right, the rest are going to create Uganda, all right? But it was just one people, not just one people who came from various, it was just one Africa, but now they decided this is going to be this different country based off of national interest and exploitation. But I would say it's just the same because we also have the diversity part of it. Like I speak Luo, the other 43 different tribes who speak different tribes, and they also add on to culture. They've got different types of foods. They've got different practices, cultures, and customs. It's kind of the same, but the American case is a bit different and unique then, because then it also has its own history, right, of how different groups have been treated at different periods of time. So American case might be a bit different and much more convoluted compared to the Kenyan case, but it has a lot of similarities too, for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, shifting gears a little bit, something I wanted to ask you about is kind of your big update since we last spoke. You're now Dr. Prince
Oh,
Nesta.
that's what they say. I don't believe it, but that's what they say. All right. Yeah.
But yeah, so you finished up your PhD, and you're now teaching at University of Tampa. So
Yeah.
I'm curious a little bit, just A, what did you study in school? What are you teaching, just for the context there?
Yeah.
And then B, what do you get out of teaching? Obviously, it's,
Yeah.
you get a teacher salary and you can live off of that. But like, why did you go into teaching versus writing articles or, just
Yeah.
working at a big company or something like that?
Yeah, several reasons, right? Back to your question for sure. It's a great question. I look back 5 years ago. If you ask me if I wanted to be a teacher, I would laugh at you. I'll be like, what is this guy smoking, right? I've been privileged enough, honestly, I must admit, that since I arrived here, because I came here to do my master's, and then, I think that's where we met in Reno, and then I decided to do my PhD at University of Oregon, right? And then recently became a doctor for sure after finishing my dissertation. But I do teach here at the University of Tampa, Florida. I do teach communication and media studies. Now, if you ask me the specific classes, critical media, global media, film script writing, radio production, podcast production, and media and society, everything media, right? And what I get from it is that, to me, it's about inspiring the next generation, right? The whole world has blessed me somehow by influencing me to be who I am today. They have, I've been privileged enough to have my fees, for instance, paid for, right, through scholarship. Now, I had to work hard for it to maintain some of these scholarships and stuff, right, which wasn't an easy task, but I had to somehow become a role model for those where I come from, right, who might not have had the opportunities that I've gotten. And so, I feel it's the opportunity to be able to inspire the next generation, and at the same time for me to be able to fulfill my goals. In terms of, I always don't want to be where I was 5 years ago, right? 5 years ago, I was a master's student, and then later, now I'm a teacher, right? Assistant professor. Maybe I might become a tenured full-time, right? Tenured professor, right? So it's always an evolution as far as the stages of growth is concerned, and that's what I'm looking at. But the biggest thing is for me to be able to show that young kid growing up in Africa, any other part of the world, that you can always be where you want to be, irrespective of where you come from, all right? It's never too late in life, right? And so we all want to be something. We all want to get somewhere. Even the people who have given up in life, right? It's not that they've given up because they have given up just for the sake of it, but they're always somehow thinking, if I had this, then I'll do that, right? And so for the opportunities that presented themselves somehow, I had to grab them and, make something better for myself. And so I just give thanks, honestly, to whoever has played a key role as far as my growth is concerned. I want to inspire the next generation, especially the Gen Zers. All right, they are quite an interesting bunch for sure, but I do learn from them too. I do learn. You're a Gen Z, right?
I'm a Gen Zer.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about what's up with the phone thing, though. I do teach a lot of students, and they're always on that gadget. What's up with it?
I don't know. I think just having, growing up with media, our whole lives, we have that. And so I also think that affects our attention span, because we grew up, with media always. It's always been in our life, and we have the option to look at it all the time. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, because the Gen Z it's like their heart, Without the phone, they would collapse the next second and faint. But I'm always fascinated with those questions. And at the same time, you meet people who blow your mind, especially students, right? When they're into something, they really ask tough questions. And then I'm like, wow, who's the professor here? All right, I thought I was the professor, but they know much. And so I'm always trying to tap onto the younger generation and their energy too. Because then as older generation, I'm a millennial. I can't say, oh, these guys have got nothing to offer me. All right. And so if you hang out with the young people, you're going to have that young energy.
Yeah.
All right, if you hang out with the old people, you're going to be wise, yes. But then there's something also, you're going to be a little bit old, a couch potato, let me say that. But I get to learn from both of them, the wisdom from the old and the experiences, which we greatly appreciate, right? But also the young energy and vibrancy, right? Maybe it might be for the worst, honestly, because then the young people might also trick you somehow, lead you astray. But I don't know, you're also a Gen Z, right?
I remember I did school for business, and there were marketing books that broke down the generational differences on how to market. And I remember there was one semester where I had 2 books, and one of them said I was Gen Z, and one of them said I was millennial. So I'm
when were you born?
96.
90. You're a millennial. You're on the spectrum.
Yeah, I'm right in between. It kind of just depends what facts you're reading. And sometimes it says it starts at like 94. Gen Z. Other one says it's 98, or some of them say 96. So I'm right in the middle.
Yeah, I see. Well, what do you think? Your energy and spirit, and how do you feel yourself? Where you are?
So as far as the generations go, I really think the big difference is what we're talking about with the technology. Like, I think that's the way the world has changed the most from generation to generation. And so, for me, I got my first iPhone as maybe like a sophomore in high school, and so I'd still had years of like, there was a couple of years where I had a flip phone where you could like do calls. And
did you ever use a BlackBerry?
I didn't have a BlackBerry, but I had like I remember like that was a little before my time.
Oh, I see.
My friend's parents had them, and then I had like a knockoff BlackBerry for it. But anyways, I think I got to be in high school without having relied on technology. So I got to, when I was young, I would just play in the woods by myself. There was no, and my parents were pretty strict. There was no screens. I wasn't allowed to watch TV. So I'd just play outside. I'd play with the ball. I'd play with the dog. Sometimes I'll just, throw a ball in my room, hit the ceiling, for hours in a row. And so I feel like, I think it was a big part of it. But on the other hand, now that we're relying on technology, I do think like it's harder from like, it's probably, and I can kind of relate to Gen Z and millennials, where I think that the thing millennials can do is they can like function with all the distractions going on, whereas millennials get kind of lost in the distractions since they didn't they're from a time when there weren't such a heavy flow of notifications, such as dings and vibrations and stuff like that. Whereas I think millennials, they can kind of deal with all the hype without like getting super sucked in. They can jump in and then they can go back to the room that they're in, rather than like, I know when I talk to my mom and she's on her phone, she's like in a different world. Like, and it's either like she's all in that world or she's all in the real world. It's all digital or all real.
We've got grandmas on TikTok though.
Yeah, we do.
We have what on TikTok?
Grandmas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But and so I guess just actually, so I want to come back to this train, but there's something that you've said it twice now. You've used the word blessed and privileged, and you've kind of used them interchangeably. At one time you said like both of them next to each other, and the other time you said one in one sentence, one in the next. And the reason I noticed it is because yesterday my grandfather was saying the same thing, except he was saying blessed and fortunate, or blessed and lucky. Yeah. But I'm curious, and this kind of gets into your spiritual beliefs and all that, but like do you feel like that you're killing it, you're doing great? Do you feel more blessed? Do you feel more privileged? And what's the difference between those? Or thankful? You said that once too. Yeah. Well, the thing is, just waking up in the morning, right? I feel blessed already, right? Because what does that mean to you? What does it mean to be blessed? Yeah. Let me just put it this way. So many people think that it's the alarm clock that wakes them up in the morning, right? Like, I'm going to, at 6 o'clock, that's when I'm going to wake up, and the alarm clock is going to wake me up, right? Now there are millions of people who place their alarm clock, but they didn't wake up today,
And so by virtue of the fact that I'm going to hear that sound, I'm going to wake up in the morning, means there's a higher power somewhere, that which I believe in, being a spiritual person. There is a higher power, right, somewhere who actually somehow influences me in my inner spirits and speaks to me and gives me life, all right? And in that case, so being blessed is somehow much more deeper and spiritually connected than being privileged, right? To me, being privileged is somehow worldly thing, right? In the sense of there might be opportunities that there are people, right, who I have been somehow, the people might have not gotten, but through the powers that be, or whichever, or whatever, how I got there in such a way that now I can be able to achieve my education, at the same time get a master's degree, PhD degree. I feel that's a privilege in itself, all right? But now, am I blessed to have the brains, all right? By who blessed me to have those brains? I believe it might be a higher power somewhere, right? And in that case, yes, I do work hard for sure, but so many people work hard, but so many people aren't privileged. They might be blessed, all right, but they aren't privileged to have a PhD in that case, all right? So I feel like leave the worldly things out of there. So I feel like being blessed is much more spiritual in that case. It's much more deeper in that case. I can throw away all the privileges that I have, but really in this world we own nothing, you know. We own nothing. We came here, we were born, and then a time will come when we'll fade away, right? And then we'll be forgotten. And so what matters most is the impact that we created in the world. Will people remember you 50 years from now? Will people remember how privileged you are, all right, 50 years from now? Or will people remember how blessed you are? So I feel like being blessed carries you to the next afterlife, right? But your privilege really, nobody will bother about it in the afterlife, right? And so I feel like even the word blessed is, to me, is much more, because I grew up in a spiritual background, all right?
Can you touch on that real quick?
Yeah, I grew up as a Christian for sure, right? Because of the British influence. So we grew up as Christians. And although I don't go to church often, right now, I hope my grandma is not listening, because if you're in grandma's house, you got to go to church, right? But I do pray sometimes, right? Just my direct communication to God, right? Now, I won't say that God belongs to this group or that group. To me, I feel God is for us all, right? But do I go to church to express how I feel to this higher power? Not at all. I do pray personally. Before I eat, I give thanks for the farmers, right? I give thanks to whichever higher power that, makes the food grow and all that kind of stuff. I also give thanks to just have that air that I breathe every day, right? And stuff like that. So, yep. I'm a much more spiritual person than religious, because with religion, somehow it's structures, right, that people create. And so, but with spirituality, is much more honest, I feel, compared to religion. But I also respect other people's opinion as far as spiritualism is concerned, because there are people who believe in whatever they believe in and stuff. And I still feel we're all human beings, no matter what, for sure. Yeah. Unless you two, what do you all believe in, honestly? It's a tough question, so I want to hear it from you all, too. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up Quaker, which is technically a sect of Christianity. But it's pretty different than like Catholicism or being a Protestant or Baptist or something.
We've got Quakers in Kenya too.
Yeah,
is it the Friends Church?
Yeah, exactly.
Friends,
and I've grown up, went to the Friends school, so from a young age, I kind of stopped going to the practices, but we always had them in school. I went to the same school from 1st through 12th grade. So once a week, I would do that practice. And the practice is just sitting in silence. There's no pastor. There's no preacher or anything. So everyone just sits in silence. And if you feel moved to speak to the group, you can stand up and speak your mind. And sometimes it's it would go for like, in school we would do it for like a half hour, but in the week, in the Sunday meetings, it would go for like a full hour of
Did
sitting.
you used to speak a lot? Stand up and speak a lot?
I was always quiet. There was a couple times,
Yeah.
but it was a rare occurrence for me. And I've always just been more of a listener than a speaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my background religiously.
But where are you at right now in your journey?
Yeah, so I've never been and especially when I was younger, I was never a big believer in a narrative, right? So I never took one of like any religious book, the narratives. I never really like stood by that as like the guide to the ways to live my life. But I don't know, what I've said before is like, if there is a God, God has got my back. I believe that, even though I'm not a big believer in general. And that gets to what you're saying with being blessed, privileged. I've had a lot of opportunities in my life that I try not to take for granted. I'm sure I do to an extent, but I think that humans are interconnected. I'm into neuroscience and all that kind of stuff, and there's evidence that like if I'm sitting here with you and you smile, and the same chemicals that are being released in your brain as you smile are released in smaller quantities in my brain. So I think that like the emotional well-being or the emotional turmoil that we're all in, it kind of like it reverberates to the people around us and
explains why so many people like comedians, huh?
Yeah, exactly. They're bringing the fun chemicals into your brain. So so that's on the relatively micro level. If we're talking about us here in this conversation, sort of being emotionally connected to an extent, it's not the same amount of chemicals being released in my brain as yours, but it's generally there's patterns that overlap. But so I think that on a large scale, humanity as a whole is connected. You know, like through our individual connections, we're connected as a group. And so you're talking earlier about making an impact 50 years from now, and I think it's like there's a quote from Nikola Tesla. He's an electrician from the early 1900s, late 1800s.
I know him. Actually, they say he's the guy who developed radio, came up with radio. Yeah. But then he was deceived somehow.
He wasn't a good businessman, but he was a great inventor. And so J.P. Morgan and a lot of those guys kind of made money off. But besides the point, but he had one quote, and I'm going to butcher it. It's not word for word, but it was something like, I don't work for humans, I work for humanity. And I always thought that was cool. Like he's trying to make an impact on a species level.
Humans can disappoint you, you know.
Yeah, exactly. They can stab you in the back, but humanity as a whole, we're all moving together.
That's right. That's interesting, actually.
Yeah, and he breaks down human progression as like he's an analytical guy. He does a lot of math, so it's like mass times velocity. And so the human mass is the size of us. The velocity is like the rate of cultural progression. That's at least how I understand it. And so mass times velocity is total force if you're talking about an object moving in space. But if you're talking about humanity moving in time, it's the size of our population times the rate at which our culture is progressing.
Wow.
But yeah, what about you, Megan? What's your
Grab the microphone.
That's a really great question. I'm gonna have to ponder on that one.
Now, did you grow up like spiritual or religious?
I feel like I'm more spiritual now, but I grew up more like going to Catholic services, and it had no meaning to me. I was kind of very ritual, like they say stuff, I don't know, and you're just kind of like there. And then I would like, as I grew older, I went to a non-dominant church, like a Christian church, non-denominational, and I liked that better. But I just think, even now, I see myself as more spiritual and not like latching on. Like I agree with you in the sense of, like God is for everyone and not like just a different religion. I'm gonna ponder.
Yeah. Are you blessed or privileged?
Oh, I wasn't listening. Both.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you want me to elaborate more.
Yeah. Because then again, life. Maybe what impact? If I ask you, what impact? How would you like to be remembered?
Oh, that's a great one. Great question. I'd like to be remembered for helpfulness, to be helpful in some sort of sense. I don't know which sense, but if you help someone, I don't know.
Yeah.
How would you like to be remembered yourself?
I mean, honestly, kind of same thing. I've thought about it like you're saying helpfulness. For me, I've thought about it more like as a human, part of humanity, you got to carry your own weight in terms of and I think we have a capitalist society set up so that everyone gets paid for their efforts.
Yeah.
And in theory, you get paid proportional to the amount that you're helping. I think there's some flaws with the system, but I don't know how proportional things are. But I want to at least carry my weight and then some. If I can do more than just put out what I take from humanity. If I can put out more than I take, then I will have succeeded as a human. And then it's just levels of that, if I can figure out how to put out more than I take, can I figure out how to put out even more, a lot more, so that I'm giving back more than I'm taking from our species as a whole. That's kind of how I think about it. And I think that the people who do that best are the ones who, I consider myself a writer. And I think it's it's not even creating ideas. It's combining ideas from different sources to give people insights into how to organize their energy to helping humanity. It's if I can carry my weight and I can encourage other people to carry their weight, then I will have made a big impact. So I don't know. I think of making impact as trying to increase the human energy or the energy of humanity, and to a greater extent to which I can do that, the more impact I will have made. How about you? You mentioned that you want to make an impact, but and then we talked a little bit about your teaching.
Yeah, that's right.
And we talked a little about your radio. To me, it seems like they're both connected by making an impact. You want to bring people together with the music.
Yeah.
You want to improve the quality of your students' lives and of your students' work.
Yeah, I don't know if my students are going to remember me, honestly. But I'm hoping, even if they don't remember me, I'm hoping that I change something. I influence, not change. I influence something in them. I made them become better than they met me, right? I like to build and I like to bring some positive or influence things positively, right? And so hopefully I'm making an influence in their lives, and which is going to impact not only them, but their families and their future generations, right? Because when you give, they'll also give back at some point, right? And so that's the system of it's a web of chains, where it's somehow like a spider web, right? When you get trapped here, you might get trapped in so it's somehow we are all interconnected somehow. And so if you influence somebody positively today, now I always have around 40 students in my class. If I influence only one, all right, hopefully they can be able to also empower other people and stuff. And so in my own small, tiny way, I'm hoping that I'm making a difference. As far as how I personally want to be remembered, do I even want to be remembered, honestly? I think I would like people to tell me, to answer that question for me, instead of me answering that question, right? Because it's a bit tough for me. I might say I want to be remembered this way, and people want to be, and so for instance, I always think that I'm trying to improve people's life, and then somebody is going to say, "Oh, that's the guy with the good voice." That's the only thing they remember, right? And so they don't see anything else, right? They only see that, all right? And so hopefully I get remembered in terms of different things that I left onto this earth, right? But then again, it's always good for me to listen to people, because sometimes you're you made an impact, but how you think you made that impact is not how the other person feels.
Right.
And so, yeah. But honestly, as far as where I'm going with my life, is just I want a life of happiness and peace, you know. It's a tough one, and happiness, because with happiness, it's bigger than money. It's bigger than anything that you can ever imagine. When you want to go towards your later stages in life and stuff, when, like, I'm 35 years old right now, and I can see somehow, right, you're sort of caught up in this situation where you're no longer young and you're not also that old, right? And so there's somehow this half-life crisis. And so I'm preparing towards my peace and happiness in the later years. Yeah, so honestly, how to be remembered would be quite a tough one, because I've influenced people differently. I'd like them to somehow tell me how I've influenced them. I'd like them to say it, but I do know that I just want a life of peace and happiness in my later years, for sure. Yeah.
Would you rather make an impact or be remembered?
I would rather make an impact.
Yeah.
I would rather make an impact, because being remembered is also kind of tricky, because after 100 years, who remembers you anyway?
Yeah.
Or even, leave alone 100 years. After that weekend, after you're dead and gone, maybe a couple of months, and then people move on, right?
Yeah, once everyone's moved to Mars,
Right.
no one's going to remember us back here on Earth.
Yeah. But hopefully I meet other people and I remember them. If really there's this other place called heaven, then hopefully I get to meet you all and create podcasts someday.
Yeah,
right?
Infinite podcast.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, now somebody was saying that we do hope that there's going to be internet up there.
If there's not a TikTok, I'm leaving.
Yeah, we're going to have a heaven TikTok. All right. Yeah.
All right, the last, and we can start wrapping up soon, but the last question, and I kind of took us on a tangent at one point when I brought up the blessed and privileged thing,
Right.
but that was something I kept nagging at me. But when I sent us on that tangent, we were talking about technology.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what was the technological influences of your childhood? Like, what kind of devices did you use or not use?
Yeah.
And then as you've gotten older, you're 35 now, you've lived in different states, in different countries. What differences in technology use have you seen, and how has that affected communication with loved ones and information and just
Yeah. I think I grew up, I didn't really have much technology when I grew up. Some people did, but my grandma was a bit old school, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like she lived a more authentic life. But she also was open-minded to technology, right? Like, for instance, radio. The radio that she had in the house influenced me and inspired me to be who I am today. I wouldn't have been here if it would have been for her, her influence in that case. But the first computer that I touched, actually, I was in university. After high school, that's when I was trying to learn how to use technology. And now other people actually grew up with these things in their houses. But just like your case, where TV, my grandma viewed it as a luxury.
Yeah.
Right? There's no watching TV right, in my house. You better read or do something, right?
Yeah.
Meaningful with your life.
What about a phone? Did you guys have a phone? Like, if you wanted to hang out with your friend, would you call them first, or would you just
Not when I was young, right?
Yeah.
But and then the phone technology also is something that was of a recent phenomenon, especially the mobile phone is a recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
Now, did we have like the landlines and stuff in the house? Not in our own personal household, but other people did, for sure.
So if you wanted to hang out with your friend when you were 10 or something, would you just walk to
go
their
and
house?
knock or whistle.
Yeah.
We had a whistle. They just know, right? And so that was a way of, I think, a much more interesting way of communicating.
Yeah, the original
vis-a-vis
notification.
nowadays. Right. Like, right?
even know
The
how to
notification received, and then if they whistle back, and and the dating system was also like that, right? You agree that I'm gonna pass by, and if you hear this kind of sound, sometimes you throw stones, all right, at their gate or somehow. So unless and you hope that you don't get caught also.
Yeah.
So we all had all these different tactics of somehow communicating and stuff. But the world has changed, right? And it's even changed for me too. Now, I'm a younger guy and I love technology. But the rate at which technology is going is even confusing me personally, because now there are thousands of apps every day, there are thousands of different ideas. But what really bothers me today is that even the AI creators, for instance, are holding press conferences and calling the government and calling each and every stakeholder to complain that whatever animal they are creating is going to be the end of the world. Now, to me, I think that is really powerful because how can he create a monster and then ask us for help? You feel? And so they created the AI and called a press conference, all right, saying, hey, we need to find ways of how to control this thing. I just hope that with all the changes that are going on, it won't be the end of us. It won't be the end of mankind or humankind in this case. But it has impacted on the media significantly. One of the things why I decided to come back to school, vis-a-vis going to the industry actually, was because I wanted to, the media had changed. I wanted to empower myself and see, especially coming to the United States, right, which is a world leader as far as digital technology is concerned. I wanted to come and train with the best so that I know and be able to somehow impact on people maybe from the African continent too, all right, and share the knowledge and skill that I do have for sure. Because in Africa, we are much more open to and receptive to digital and stuff, and there's a big digital evolution taking place down there. But at the same time, there's also a bigger percentage of people somehow just need to be inspired, all right? Not that they lack the knowledge, they just need to be inspired somehow for them to be able to adapt to this technology for their own benefit for sure. And that's why I'm doing this. But to the topic as to whether it's going to be our end destruction, it's one of the things that I'm exploring right now. I'm really fascinated with. Yeah. But how about you all? Do you think this is the end of us? This is it for humanity as we know it, since all this AI stuff has not only divided us, but who knows, like we were talking earlier, we might have aliens as neighbors now, or robots, all right? Robots. Imagine going on a date with a robot. Right? Is it the end of us, Meagan? Are you scared at all?
Oh, I'm excited for what it has to hold. I would love to hang out with the robot. I think it'd be so cool. And if no one wants to hang out with you and like everyone's busy, well, they're not going to be busy when AI takes all our jobs. But anyways, if no one wants to hang out with me, I'll hang out with a robot. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Wait until the battery or there's a system malfunction and it eats you or whatever.
And I won't know any different because I'll be eaten.
Yeah.
And I'll make history and I'll be remembered for being the first person to get eaten by a robot.
Right?
Let's go.
Yep. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know about that, honestly. I don't agree with you, but I don't want to be eaten by a robot, but I'm hoping the robots are going to change the world positively. Or impact it positively. Yes. But I'm a bit bothered by that, honestly. I feel like we are losing ourselves. We should go back somehow to our old school, the 80s. Let's take it old school a little bit, right?
Well, maybe they'll make a time machine for real. For real, a real time machine.
Maybe the robots will figure that out for us. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do worry a little bit that, but I don't know. I feel like going back to like humanity as a mass and a force, I do feel like or mass and velocity equaling force. I feel like AI and robots and all that could increase a lot to the velocity at which humans evolve. And I don't know if like biologically we're going to be able to keep up with that. Like I generally eat kind of like an ancestral diet, mostly just meat and vegetables, like things that our ancestors before processed food and distribution chains could have eaten, like the things you'd find, the things you'd catch. And I think so I have this belief that like we're biologically evolved to live in a pre-technological world, and as the world gets more and more technologically dependent, we're kind of moving further and further from our evolved habitat. So I don't know. Part of me wonders if our ideas as a humanity is just going to be uploaded to robots, and then robots are going to kind of take the baton and carry those ideas to whatever's next. And
it's kind of
with or
already
without
happening.
The biological humans. Yeah.
Yeah, with
So
the
I don't know if that's a bad
algorithms,
thing.
actually.
Yeah.
The algorithms, they're already somehow influencing our minds, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like you say, they're somehow put us into some chambers, echo chambers, where we can't think about, we can't welcome other people's ideas and stuff. And so, and I feel like we have already changed. We've been influenced by the technology already,
definitely.
right? And so the question is it for the good or for the worst? And to me, I'm much more bothered by the worst part of it, because anybody can be able to manipulate it and somehow, and it's going to be the end of us, right? I'm talking in terms of like maybe creating weapons of mass destruction, for instance, right? Where somebody might just find this information and somehow that's going to be the end of the world. So it might be into some bad actors who can use this information to somehow maybe even create chaos around the world. Now, the world has changed, just like you mentioned, like the wars right now. You don't need to send boots on the ground. You just send drones, right?
Yeah.
And so you're sending drones to go and kill millions of people, and it's remote control, right? So of whose benefit is that, all right? But can we use these robots to somehow grow foods and, right, organic foods, that is. We don't want, which is a different topic altogether, chemical and all that kind of stuff. But can we use these robots to somehow increase the input of organic foods and other important aspects, all right, as far as life is concerned? Maybe that's where I somehow want robots to play a key role.
Yeah.
For the better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I always struggle with differentiating right from wrong. Like good from bad, and so I think either way things are changing, and it's
you struggle from differentiating good or bad.
Yeah, I do, and it.
Tell me about that. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it is context dependent. It's not like any one fact in a vacuum is just a fact, but a fact with context. And so when it comes to when I say I struggle to differentiate good from bad, it's in a universal sense. I feel like it's hard to draw lines. And so I think if you look at how humanity is changing with technology, is going to continue to change. And I think technology is something that's progressing it's an exponential curve. It's not a linear thing. So it's getting faster and faster, the amount we're changing, and the more we change, the faster the rate of change is going to be. I think we're on that curve. We're starting to hit that that fast rate, and so I struggle to even understand what good or bad is, let alone analyze whether these changes are good or bad. But I think either way, it's happening. We gotta make the most of it, and as individuals, try to do what we can to make an impact, to do what we individually consider to be good for the future.
I feel you for sure, because everything has its good and bad, right?
Yeah.
It's even including humans, right?
Yeah.
And so the same technology which might create chemicals which might kill us is the same technology that can also be used to detect those diseases, same diseases. But hopefully there's much more positive than there's more good. I believe I can still make that distinction from good or bad, but I also agree with you, context really matters. It just depends with whoever, because what's good to you might not be bad to me or good to me at the same time, and vice versa. I agree with you from that aspect for sure.
I think to kind of tie some things together, you're talking earlier about like it's hard to trust people because there could be someone, holding that knife behind the back. That's come up a couple times now, and you're talking about how there's just going to be some people who don't have the same values as you. They're going to, stab you in the back, even if that's, they're doing something that breaks your personal values. But I think the worry is that the knives behind the back are getting more and more powerful, like with the enhancements of technology. Yeah. But by the same token,
AI knives, right?
Yeah, AI knives.
That's crazy.
AI knives that, with drones and nuclear.
Yeah, holding drones, man.
Yeah, the knives are, but on the flip side, the tools for growth and development are also getting more powerful. So it's gonna get to a point where there's the advent of technology is powerful enough that it's gonna make big impacts.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so, because
we just gotta do what we can as individual humans on behalf of.
Because I'm looking at the attention span right now. It's somehow reducing, right?
Can you see me over here the whole time?
Yeah. Oh, hopefully we're not boring you to death.
I'm like looking all over the room.
You gotta grab your phone. Where's your phone?
It's right over there, and I kept looking over at it. I kept looking at it, but I didn't touch it. Right. I can do it. I don't have to have my phone every 3 seconds, only every 4 seconds.
Yeah. Now, how does it feel to be away from that technology?
Oh, it's like a drug. It's like I'm like tweaking. Like I actually am. Like you can see me when you run the footage back, and I'm like literally swinging my legs and like going like this. I also just have really bad ADHD, so that doesn't help.
Yeah.
And I didn't take any stimmies today.
No, it's understandable.
I only had 1 cup of coffee, and that was hours and hours ago, so I can't keep up, I should have took a Vyvanse before this conversation. Oh my goodness.
No, it's totally understandable.
Prescribed.
I mean, the attention span for sure. I can see the effects, right?
Yeah.
Especially, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, I definitely think, like, the different generations, like, the media has an effect on, I don't want to say it causes, like, people that have, it kind of does. Maybe. I'm just going to stop talking.
No, you're good. Yeah.
Your turn.
Yep. So, with the attention span, and it's not only the Gen Z generation. All generations is cutting across now. Yeah. It's just that the influence somehow has impacted on the Gen Z generation, even the millennials, right, to some extent. At the same time, it is a negative influence in the sense of some people, in this case, it's gonna, like, I feel like right now with the TikTok and Instagram, it's 1 minute, is it 45 seconds to 1 minute?
Like 15 seconds sometimes. And then
15
sometimes
seconds.
I can't even get through the whole 15 seconds before I have to scroll because
Right.
it's not like stimulating enough. Like I need the, like, I'm like, oh, okay, next. Because it's really nice how you can just swipe.
Now, long term, what impact do you think that's gonna have as far as the world is concerned?
I don't know. All I can say is I can barely get through a whole movie, because that's too long of a duration to focus in on a storyline. Where like on TikTok, the storylines are like 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or if it is a storyline, it's broken up into different shorter parts. I also it's much more likely for me to watch an episode of shows, like a show where you can watch episodes, or like an episode of like 30 minutes. I don't want to sit and watch a 2-hour movie all the time. Yeah. I do sometimes, but it's harder to pay attention. But what was the question? I forgot the question.
No, you're totally fine. I just feel like the way we're discussing aspects to do with technology and some of its impacts, right? And so I was just calling upon attention span also as a big issue, and it might get worse, right? It might get to 5 seconds now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or we might not even care about anything. We're just somehow going through it and stuff. And so as far as knowledge goes, is that the end of knowledge? Does that mean that, it's going to reach a point where we don't even need books, right? Because people just want to see the visual aspect of it, entertainment, and
But
that,
someone has to make that content.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
some people have to read the books.
and misinformation and disinformation right now. It
There's
has
so
become
much
a big deal,
misinformation.
right? Fake
Yeah.
news. I see people post on their Instagram pages all that 15 seconds of nonsense, really, right? And so I'm looking at, because you said you don't know how to differentiate between good and bad also, but I can see as far as the attention span is going, it might be good for some people, but as a teacher myself, all right, who's supposed to teach for 2 hours, can you believe that? All right, and after 15 seconds, my students have already tuned out. They want out, right? And I'm looking at the way I went to school, where I would pay close attention. Now, I wasn't the best student in class in terms of paying attention, but at least we tried, at least 30 minutes, right, given. And so it's now, let's just say after 2 minutes or 5 minutes, the class is gone. People are doing their own stuff. And I can see this from the vantage point of being a teacher and working with a younger generation, that it's a negative effect significantly. It's influencing. Maybe it's making them even become much more creative. I don't know. Do you feel like you're more creative?
I don't know. But I just finished my student teaching in a 4th grade classroom, and like the attention span at that age level is like you were talking about, like and you're like short. So I
So
don't
you're saying
know.
that the difference between
You
millennial
didn't
and
let
Gen
me
Z
finish
is the
my
same as,
question.
just clarifying, you're saying that what he sees as a millennial looking at Gen Z is what you're seeing as a Gen Z looking at 4th graders?
No, I'm saying that that's accurate, and then what to do. But even when I was a Gen Z as a littler person, and getting taught by like millennials or whatever generation was teaching me, I had a hard time being able to learn because of the style of teaching. Like, I was not engaging. So I found, like, I think I'm an engaging person in the sense, because I don't know, but I've noticed that it's hard to engage audiences, like, even if they're younger and a short attention span, it takes a lot you have to put on a whole show, like a whole show, in order to get whatever you're trying to get taught, especially at that young age. And I've worked with levels like kindergarten, horrible, like you can't teach them you can, but it's really hard to engage that group because of the attention span. And I definitely see that media and all the technology that they have had, like, literally since the womb, which, you know, the iPad kids, like, scrolling on the iPad, and they get that. So it's really hard for them to be engaged. So I just have to adapt and be engaging.
Yeah, how? I mean, sometimes I'm in class and I'm like, even if you brought the greatest comedian in history to teach this class, they won't be here. They're already gone, right?
You have to switch it up a lot.
So you always like, but I like what you say, because you also have to somehow devise strategies of engaging them and stuff. But it's a sticking point when it comes to learning. I also church. I don't know, for those who still go to church, I don't know if people still pay close attention. I remember when I was young, people would stay in church the whole day.
Yeah, I could never.
Right.
Unless unless their choir is really good. Or
And by choir being good, you mean the type of music too, right?
You gotta have all the different genres. You just gotta have your whole radio station there.
Right. Maybe rodeo too in church.
Oh yeah, you need to bring a rodeo. That's a great idea. Oh my gosh, we're gonna make a new religion.
It's gonna be more of a cult, you know.
Yeah.
Are you all in cults? Do you believe in cults? Are you thinking of joining one, or are you in one already?
No.
Oh, you never
Maybe
know.
I'll start one.
I'll join your cult. Maybe we'll see what the values in your cult are.
Yeah, it all comes down to the values.
I wonder what cult I would actually
I don't know.
belong to, honestly.
Like I said earlier, I always struggle to buy into narratives that other people have made on how I should live my life. You know, so that's why I've never fully adopted any one religion, is because that's just a set of narratives to kind of abide. And I think they all have value, and they all have their place, and they can help me. The more I learn, the more I can take the messages from them. And honestly, that the narrative thing is kind of what I'm thinking about here. So I going back to what I was talking about earlier, I think as humans, our brains are designed to understand things in narratives. And your teacher, like, and I think like what teaching is putting memories into people's head. Memories are created by understanding a narrative where there's like a beginning, an impact, and then an ending. Like what happens, how does it get impacted, and what's the result. And so I think there's sort of this beginning, middle, end narrative structure underlying all memory creations. And I think that what I see is as technology becomes more common is that the narratives are getting shorter, and the hooks are getting stronger. What I worry about is that the impacts are getting left behind. There's sort of like hook, and so the beginning and end, but I'm worried that the middle is getting lost because there's just, if you're on TikTok, every 15 seconds there's a beginning and a mid. There's not a lot of time for the middle, and so there's when we're talking about misinformation, it's easier to, without having so much time directed towards the middle, it's easier for details to slip through the cracks. It's easier to come to a conclusion that's not representative of what's actually happening, what actually happened. But at the same time, like, who am I to say what's right or wrong? So that's from my perspective, from where I grew up. That's what's concerning, is that we're losing the meat of the narratives. But at the same time, like, maybe it's just if we can all learn to like give stronger hooks, and every 10 seconds keep doing more hooks, like maybe that'll make us more entertaining and more.
It's not easy,
Yeah.
So it depends on the subject also that you're teaching now. There's some topics which requires you to, they're like, you've taught before somehow. When you engage, there's some topics which you can't even crack jokes, right? Because they might be tough subjects to talk about. And so I just feel like there's so much that you can do, right? If somebody has paid fees and wants to be there to learn, for sure they're going to be there. Some people just want to take the credit, right? But especially for you, since you said you teach 4th grade, is that...
elementary education.
Because that one now at that stage, honestly, then I think with the Gen Z in the university, it's too late, I feel. But for you, I think it's too early. It's actually the best time for you to shape and influence their mind somehow, in the sense of trying to create that longer attention span, right? You're somehow unwinding what the Gen Zers have done, so you're kind of making it better. But at the same time, I don't know what sort of technologies maybe do you use to teach that can also be an influence, right? But I don't know. I don't know if I would manage, honestly, to teach 4th graders. It's just too much work, I feel. And, I give it up to you all for sure, since you actually do way more than I do in terms of teaching, because I know how demanding that can be, for sure.
Management is crazy.
Cool, man. Well, later on you're going to show us the University of Tampa.
I'm so excited.
And then,
what's the Tampa mascot?
Spartan.
Go Spartans!
Go Spartans. We are the Spartans.